He arrived under gray skies and suspicious eyes, the shuttle's landing kicking up red dust that clung to his boots as if the planet itself didn't want to let him go. Sergeant Rook stepped off alone, his gait heavy, marked by the weight of old cybernetics that hissed softly with every movement. No welcoming committee, no handshakes, just a silent line of galactic enforcers, their armor gleaming, their expressions amused or indifferent. "Looks like someone forgot to scrap the relic," one of them muttered. It was loud enough for everyone to hear. Rook didn't answer. He rarely did. Words hadn't saved his squad. His silence made them uncomfortable, as if they expected him to crack or lash out. But he simply walked past, heading toward the barracks like he had done it 1,000 times before. Because he had. The outpost was isolated, orbiting a forgotten edge of galactic influence where only pirates, smugglers, and mistakes ended up. The enforcers stationed there were the kind who were better at laughing in bars than handling real threats. They hadn't seen war. Not like Rook had. The mess hall quieted when he entered. His presence pulled focus like a black hole. He moved like he didn't belong, but also like he didn't care. He ate in silence. No one joined him. A pair of junior enforcers whispered about him, snickering until the senior officer barked something about discipline. But even the reprimand was half-hearted. He was a joke to them, a broken human dragged out from some old conflict nobody cared to remember. There were scars on his arms, partially hidden by the dull gray of outdated armor. Some were burn marks, others clean slices, souvenirs from weapons no longer in use. His left hand was artificial, precision-made, but older than most of the enforcers around him. His eye glowed, faintly blue, a combat optic implant from the Virex War, long since decommissioned. The others carried the latest tech. Rook carried ghosts. They called it the Siege of Virex 9. 12,000 human soldiers stranded after the Galactic Council pulled support when projections said the planet was lost. No supplies, no evac. Humanity fought for another 93 days. Only 38 walked away. Rook was one of them. He never talked about it. He didn't have to. His file was classified enough to spark curiosity, but redacted enough to fuel disrespect. A mystery becomes a target when no one bothers to understand it. The Council never gave medals to the survivors. They just relocated them, reassigned them, tucked them out of sight. Heroes didn't suit political narratives. In the equipment bay, Rook cleaned his rifle. The same model he carried on Virex, refurbished by his own hands. A passing officer scoffed. "You know we got plasma rifles, right? No need to cling to antique trash." Rook didn't look up. "Plasma overheats." That was all he said. The officer left with a sneer, muttering typical human under his breath. In his quarters, sparse and metallic like all the rest, Rook sat facing the wall. A hollow projector hummed beside him, showing flickers of old battlefield recordings, brief, silent loops. Not nostalgia. Study. Discipline. Memories are less dangerous when you face them. Attached to his belt was a small black device, no bigger than a deck of cards. Most assumed it was a comms relay or data drive. Nobody asked about it. Nobody wanted to. He trained alone in the mornings. A mix of old Earth calisthenics and close-quarters drills. The enforcers mocked him, said real soldiers used combat sims now. He kept training anyway. Movements sharp, deliberate, practiced beyond perfection. His body bore the cost, but he kept going. There was something in his silence that made some of them uneasy, like a storm buried beneath still water. They couldn't see the purpose behind the routine. To them, he was just an artifact. But Rook was never idle. He had seen what came when you were unprepared. He had watched untrained soldiers die screaming in alien mud while smarter men ran. So he endured the jokes, the mockery, the eyes that dismissed him because they didn't know. They had never been abandoned. They had never survived. 2 weeks into his assignment, the first warning came through a scrambled distress ping from an unmanned perimeter drone. Interference masked the source. The enforcers dismissed it as a malfunction. Rook didn't. He checked the coordinates, memorized them, and resumed maintenance on his rifle without comment. The others went back to their card game. Later that day, a recon squad was deployed to check for possible raider activity. Light armor, low urgency, overconfident. Rook approached the commanding officer and advised doubling the squad and loading heavy gear. The officer laughed. "You think we need help from a limping antique?" Rook stared, then walked away. The recon squad vanished. Their final comms were static-laced screams and garbled warnings. Something moved faster than they could react to. Four returned, blood-soaked and shaking, eyes wild. One collapsed at the gate, muttering nonsense between gasps. The medics couldn't get a coherent report. The base commander blamed local fauna. Rook said nothing, but began reinforcing the gate with scrap, plating from the vehicle yard. No one helped. Within hours, a second signal flared, this time from a closer zone. Enforcers scrambled, still treating it as a manageable threat. Another team went out. They didn't come back. Not even static. Just silence. Rook requested access to the base's deep archives. He cross-referenced the distress signal patterns and infrared telemetry. His face hardened. This wasn't a local threat. It wasn't raiders. It was worse. He found one match. Swarborn, a failed bioweapon created during the Orion conflict, designed to adapt biologically to any species' defensive measures. Banned under Galactic code. Supposedly extinct. But the data was clear. They'd evolved. Faster, more efficient, more ruthless. He tried to brief the command staff. They didn't listen. "You're drawing conclusions from classified files you shouldn't even access. You're sending kids to die," he replied flatly. They dismissed him from the room. That night, the Swarmborn came in force. The perimeter sensors flickered, then failed, then screams. Rook was already moving, already armored, already ready. The enforcers panicked, fumbling gear and protocols. They hadn't faced enemies that killed in seconds and moved like liquid shadows. Rook's outdated rifle spoke first, tearing through the first wave with brutal accuracy. He moved like a man possessed, cutting through clawed bodies with mechanical precision, covering retreating squads that would have otherwise died. He didn't shout. He didn't command. He just acted, and in the chaos, others followed. The base fell into lockdown. Medical bays overflowed. 12 enforcers dead. 5 missing. The command staff reduced to whispers. No one laughed at Rook now, but the shame in their eyes burned louder than any apology. In the days that followed, the base entered a cold silence. Rook patrolled alone, repaired what he could, set new traps using low-tech explosives, tools the Swarmborn didn't recognize. He kept to the shadows, cataloging swarm behavior, adapting faster than the others could even analyze. He'd seen this before. This was Virex all over again. The remaining enforcers eyed him differently now, with a mixture of fear and dependence. They didn't ask what he was doing, but they watched. Some began copying his drills in private. Still, the tension inside the walls grew thicker. The Swarmborn weren't retreating. They were studying, testing, finding weaknesses. One night, a junior officer cornered Rook. Desperation cracked his voice. "What are they? Why didn't command warn us?" "They didn't know," Rook replied. "Then how do you—" "I bled with them." There was no need to explain more. Each day, another enforcer broke down. Some argued about abandoning the base. Evacuation. Fleeing. But no ships came. No messages got through. The Swarmborn were choking comms with biological interference. They were learning. The command staff was paralyzed. Leadership vanished behind locked doors. Rook didn't. He moved through the halls like a tether to reality. Quiet, focused, steady. When the lights flickered, people checked to see if he was still there. If Rook hadn't left, there was still hope. The base psychologist filed a report that Rook showed signs of battle trauma stabilized by ritualized routine. They didn't understand. This wasn't madness. It was muscle memory. In the dark, while others trembled, Rook prepared. Not because he believed survival was guaranteed, but because someone had to fight. Because they didn't understand yet. What's coming doesn't fear tech. It fears humans who refuse to die. The outer wall failed just after midnight. Not a full breach, just a test. A single Swarmborn broke through a vent and shredded 2 engineers before being pinned down by a brute force kinetic trap Rook had set using surplus launch coils and pressure plates. The alien's remains hissed and twitched on the floor. Its blood melted steel. Rook examined the carcass in silence. Its bone plating was thicker than any in the archived scans. Improved muscle fibers, more efficient circulatory vents. Faster, stronger, still vulnerable to analog weaponry. He took that data, adjusted his traps, and began redrawing defense zones. He didn't ask for permission. The officers had stopped issuing orders anyway. They watched from behind reinforced glass while he worked, too afraid to interfere. The rank hierarchy had collapsed without an announcement. Command had simply defaulted to him. One of the junior enforcers tried to help. She brought him scrap metal and sealed the door behind him while he welded reinforcements. She didn't speak, just followed his lead. Others saw it. Soon, 3 more joined. They mimicked his movements, copied his methods, listened without needing orders. They didn't know why it worked, but it did. Rook turned the outer corridors into kill zones. Tripwires, thermal mines, primitive gas traps. Anything the Swarmborn's genetic memory couldn't account for. Analog was their blind spot. Human history was an arsenal. During a lull, he took a moment to rest near the generator room. A younger enforcer sat nearby, shaking, clutching a standard-issue pulse rifle that had jammed during the last attack. "Why haven't you run?" the boy asked. "Everyone else talks about escape." Rook didn't look up. "There's nowhere to run. But you could have left. You had chances. You've seen what they are. I've seen what happens when no one stays." The boy didn't speak again, but he sat straighter afterward. Supplies ran low. Ammunition dwindled. Power reserves dipped under 50%. The Swarmborn didn't rush the base. They prodded it, learning its pulse. They wanted to break morale, not walls. It was a tactic Rook recognized from Virex. They weren't just killers. They were intelligent. Rook knew time was thinning. He activated the device on his belt just once. A low-frequency signal, tight-beamed through buried cables to a classified satellite above. No response. That was fine. He didn't expect one. Not yet. He kept fighting. When the next wave came, the base shook. They poured in from 6 breach points at once, a coordinated strike. Rook was already in motion. He moved with controlled fury, forcing them into crossfire zones. The enforcers fought with him, not behind him. Every command he gave was clear, lethal, necessary. They stopped seeing him as broken. They started calling him Sergeant. He was everywhere, dragging wounded to cover, shoving weapons into shaking hands, detonating traps with unshaking fingers. One by one, the Swarmborn fell. The price was high, for more enforcers died. One screamed for her mother before the acid took her. Rook closed her eyes. When the dust settled, only silence remained. Bodies littered the floor. Human, alien, half-decayed monstrosities with chitin limbs and twitching mouths. Rook stood in the middle of it all, armor cracked, left arm sparking from a shattered elbow joint. Still upright. Someone finally asked the question they'd all been thinking. What are we supposed to do now? Rook's answer was simple. You hold. That was it. No grand speech. Just certainty. The next day, the Swarmborn returned. Fewer this time, but smarter. Rook noticed the patterns. They were avoiding known traps, mimicking breach tactics that worked. Learning. So he changed tactics. Old Earth tactics. He built mock trenches in the hangar, set false targets, used flare-burst distractions to scatter their pathfinding instincts. He rewrote the battlefield mid-fight, not with code, but with instinct. No simulations, no predictions, just raw experience and the knowledge of a species that had clawed its way up from extinction 1,000 times before. The Swarmborn couldn't keep up, not because they weren't faster, but because humans were chaotic, illogical, brutal. That night, a senior officer approached him, pride swallowed under fatigue. "We'd be dead without you." "No," Rook replied. "You'd be dead without all of you. I'm just here to remind you how to fight." He said nothing else. Instead, he walked back to the wall, activated the device again, and watched the sky. Still no answer. Didn't matter. He had faith in only one thing. Humans never leave their own behind. The final push came at dawn, though there was no sun to rise. Just a shift in the color of the sky as the Swarmborn advanced with methodical precision. No shrieks, no chaos, just calculated movement. They'd adapted fully now, staggered assaults, breaching at structurally weak points, avoiding traditional kill zones. They wanted the command center. Wanted the head cut off so the rest would fall. The enforcers lined up, fewer than before, but tighter. Focused. Rook walked past them once, checking armor, gear, eyes. No fear. Just readiness. Not one of them flinched when the outer alarms began to wail. The wall cracked, not from force, but vibration. A new kind of tunneling the Swarmborn hadn't used before. Rook saw it immediately. A change. An upgrade. These weren't just enemies. They were learning at a rate bordering on intelligence. He turned to the junior officer, now acting as liaison. This is their full force. You hold the center. I'll deal with their entry. You'll be outnumbered. I've been outnumbered. He moved before she could respond. The breach came fast. 126 swarm units, by his count. Rook was waiting at the choke point. They weren't expecting resistance that early. He gave them resistance anyway. The first wave evaporated under fire. The second flanked. He let them. Led them into a fallback corridor and triggered the thermite charges he'd spent 3 days rigging in secret. 54 down in seconds. The rest scattered. He didn't chase. He let them regroup, forced them into panic mode, then ambushed again. Every bullet was placed with intent. Every movement minimized. Not rage. Not revenge. Just execution. Back at the command center, the enforcers followed the defensive patterns he'd drawn into the floor with chalk. They pushed back every incursion with growing precision. One of them shouted coordinates without looking up. Another caught a dying comrade, dragged her back, and resumed fire. The tide began to slow. That's when the Swarmborn revealed their final evolution. One emerged from the smoke, taller, armored in reflective plating, carrying fused weapons made from the base's own scrap. It didn't charge. It spoke. Not fluently, but enough. You, old one, human. Rook didn't hesitate. That's right. You resist. Pointless. I've heard that before. We adapt. So do we. It lunged. Rook dropped the last of his charges, detonated them mid-air. The blast took his rifle, took his left arm with it. He hit the ground hard, rolled, drew a sidearm. The thing was still moving. He emptied the pistol, slid under its swing, grabbed a fractured rebar from the debris, and drove into the soft joint beneath its thorax. It screamed, a high, layered noise, and collapsed in twitching agony. The remaining swarm froze, then scattered. They weren't designed to process the loss of leadership. Rook sat back against the wall, bleeding, armor sparking. Behind him, the base was still standing, smoke rising but intact. The surviving enforcers gathered slowly. Some cheered, others wept, but no one spoke to him at first. He just sat there, breathing. Then the sky broke. A shadow fell across the compound. A ship, sleek, human-designed, not council. Black hull, no insignia, no broadcast code. It landed without warning, dust scattering in all directions. The enforcers stepped back. Rook didn't move. The ramp lowered. For armored figures descended. Not council, not military. Older tech, burn-scarred plating. Their eyes locked on Rook. One of them nodded once. You called, the leader said. Rook finally stood. Blood down his side, face unreadable. Took you long enough. Traffic. The others around them stared. The junior officer stepped forward, confusion in her voice. Who are they? Rook answered without turning. Backup. The squad helped him up the ramp. No ceremony, no salute, just quiet understanding. Before the hatch closed, Rook looked back once. You've got the line now, he said. Then the ship vanished into the clouds. No medals were given, no reports submitted. The council called it an isolated breach, stabilized by local defense. But the enforcers told a different story. About an old soldier who fought like a god and bled like a man. And the last word he spoke before walking into legend was, "Backup's here."